Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm here with June wrap up with some really good number of anticipated books that got released this year. There are about 23 books that I had read in June that includes some short stories, one graphic novel and one non-fiction. As you can see on the screen, about 9 of them are 2021 anticipated releases. So without further ado, let's dive into them. First, I have White Bird written by RJ Palacio. Wonder was one of the last few books that I had read in May, and I wanted to read the companion novels as well. In Wonder series, there are three novellas and one full length novel apart from Wonder. The Julian chapter and Whitebird are related. In the Julian chapter, we get to know more about his upbringing and the reason behind Julian's behavior towards Augie. I am not going to spoil anymore. So, Whitebird is the story of Julian's grandma, who, as a young Jewish girl, had struggled to stay alive during World War II in Nazi occupied France. She tells her story to Julian for him to understand the meaning of life. This was a good story, but I am not sure if the middle grade kids would understand the Holocaust incidents mentioned here. I would rate this book a 4 out of 5. The next book I'm going to talk about is one of the June specials. It is none other than One Last Stop, written by Casey McQuiston. Red, White, and Royal Blue was a 5-star read for me, and when I heard about this book, of course I jumped at the first chance of buying it. Let's see where One Last Stop takes us. 23-year-old August has relocated to New York City and moved in with some weird roommates. Waiting tables at a 24-hour pancake diner and with non existent love life, there is nothing exciting in her life. But as she takes her subway commute for work, she keeps seeing this gorgeous girl on the train. Jane is charming, lovely, mysterious, and beautiful. Jane's way of speech, dressing, music interest, and even the things that she carries does not seem to belong to this decade. August finds that Jane had indeed gotten displaced in time from 1970s, and she does everything possible to help Jane solve the mystery and maybe send her back. I loved almost everything about this book. The author just poured her heart out in expressing the feelings of August and Jane. Digging into Jane's past might have consequences, and helping Jane might mean losing August's love. Not doing anything will still not give Jane and August a happy ending. So there were so many gorgeous friends who knowingly and unknowingly help August. Every character made an impact to the story, and I just want them all to live around me. One thing I couldn't appreciate much is the science fiction part of time travel, during which I kind of zoned out. Being an electrical engineer myself, I was okay with the usage of words like power surge and blackout, but in the fictional sense, it did not work for me. Nevertheless, that's just a minor part in the grand scheme of things, and there are so many things to appreciate here, like a queer community, drag queens, some harsh reality, painful history, familial bonding, friendships, and love. I would rate this beautiful book a 4.5 out of 5. Next, I have King of Scars duology written by Lee Bardugo. This is the continuation of the Grishavas series as the plot takes place in the same world and with the same characters. You have to read the Grishavas trilogy before picking this series, and for better experience, I would suggest you to read the Six of Crows duology as well. I'm not going to introduce the world or the characters here, so if you have not read those two series, you might not be able to follow my review here. I will leave the link to those reviews in the description below. Coming to the book now, this is the story of Nikolai, who was a prince in the Grishavas series and has become the king of Rauka now. At the end of the Grishavers, we get to read that Nikolai had been tortured by the Darkling and that he had suffered gravely, but no one knows to what extent. Now there is a darkness that is left inside him, which is growing stronger day by day, and he might unleash something dreadful if he does not destroy that for good. So, on one side, Nikolai and Zoya try to fix him, and on the other side, there is unrest in Fjerda, and Fjerdans are ready to wage a war against Ravka. Coming to Nina's story, Nina Zanik has been living undercover in Fjerda trying to save the Grisha. She also finds a way to get closer to the Fjerdan prince and sends secret information to Ravka. That's the collective story that happens in both the books. Now, coming to my review. In King of Scars, the story progressed well in all fronts, inside and outside Ravka. Be ready to be charmed by Nikolai only a little. Even though the plot was interesting, the pace was slow, sometimes boring, and the book was not a page runner. I took a lot of breaks in between reading and was not dying to return to it either. We see the story moving forward through Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina's eyes. There is a new character called Isaac who supposedly plays a critical role and gets a POV, which was not entirely necessary. He just tries to fill in the gaps when Nikolai and Zoya are away, but still, that could have been handled better by someone else. Like Jenya could have been given with a POV instead. I did not get the whole picture of Matthias Wolf's role, maintaining without spoilers, so even I didn't understand much of it. But Nina now has a purpose, and so does Nikolai and Zoya. I would rate this book a 2.5 out of 5 because the story was not up to the mark and it was boring mostly. I still continue to read the next book. So, in the second book, Rule of Worlds, Nina has a good storyline than Nikolai and Zoya. Nikolai did well in most of the places, and Zoya did not seem to be in her A game. Politics, strategies, and peace treaties were perfect. Here comes my list of complaints, and despite that, I kind of liked the book. If rule of worlds means authority or power over worlds, it happens at last, but that's not the only thing that happens. So maybe title could have been better. Zoya failing to accept herself even during war seemed to be out of character for her. I strongly feel a less charming someone would not have died if they had been fearless as they portrayed to be. Malina made guest appearances and were not useful much. Inej could have had a few more scenes. The monk, I'm not exposing the person because of spoilers, so the monk had POVs and allies, which I did not like. And I have an idea where the third book of Six of Crows will take us. I would rate this book a 3 out of 5, mostly for Nina. Next, I have The Lives of Saints by Lee Bardugo. This is a collection of stories of people who did some good deed and became saints. This is a collectible for the fans of Grishavers with beautiful illustrations of every saint and some insight into their lives. But other than that, the stories are short, like just a couple of pages long for each saint, and there isn't much to do about it either. Alina is included in this book, so you get to see her in the illustrations. That's about it. And I kind of hated the cover. The physical copies are published only in hardcovers, and come on, look at the cover of Six of Crows and King of Scars. This was nowhere compared to them and did not fit in. It felt more like children's novel than young adult. I would rate this 3 out of 5. Next, I have Darius the Great is Not Okay by Abid Kuram. So, Darius lives with his parents and a young sister in America. He loves tea more than anything, but has not been much of a Persian more than that. For the first time, he is visiting Iran because of his grandfather's illness, and he gets to know more about his mom's family history. There, he befriends Shorab, who is probably the first real friend that Darius has made. Despite their differences, Sharab is very kind and considerate, making Darius feel more welcome. They form a great friendship, and Darius overcomes his depression and gets closer to his dad. I loved how mental health was represented in the book, and that was the highlight of the story. But the book was very slow, and nothing really happened for a long time. Just that Darius has had a great experience during his visit to Iran and came back different. Maybe something will happen in the next book. I understand that the idea of the book was to express depression and how a person deals with it, but the plot could have been lightened with something more. I would rate this book a 3.5 out of 5. Now, let's go to Darius the Great Deserves Better, the second book in the series. So, Darius has returned from Iran a changed man. He is happy about getting along better with his dad, and Shorab is just one Skype call away. He gets internship at his favorite tea shop and has a boyfriend now. His grandmothers from dad's side are staying with them while his dad had taken job elsewhere. So he's not sure if Landon is the perfect boyfriend he wants, and at school this epic bully's friend is trying to be nice to him, and he is not sure how much longer he can take everything anymore. Maybe Darius deserves better. First thing, the pace was good. Darius was in a better place, making the plot more optimistic and light. Mental health issues were handled very well. Everything was balanced, and this book just made everything complete. Missed Shorab a little because he had his own issues. Overall, this was a good book, and I would rate this a 4 out of 5. If you are going to pick this series, I would suggest you get both the books because second one will make Darius' story complete. So next I have Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. I was waiting for the second installment of Deadly Education to get released to pick that series, and in the meantime decided to try other books of the authors. The story revolves around three women and their fates brought upon them by their dads. So Miriam is the daughter of a father who lends away money easily but struggles to ask back, and a mother who doesn't question his actions. Miriam has seen her grandfather, that is her mother's father, being very successful in money lending business with good money and connections. So she decides to take upon the work of extracting back the money that others owe them. She uses all the tricks up her sleeve and not only retrieves their money but also makes their life better. She saves, invests, and makes bigger money. Wanda is the daughter of a drunkard who turned worse after her mother's death. She has two brothers who also depend on her, and when she gets a chance to do some labor and save money, she jumps upon it to hoping to save enough to leave her father once and for all. Now, the third woman is Irina, who is born into royalty, but her father's only interest is marrying her to a Tsar and moving up in the circle for money and political reasons. Moving on to the men, there are these grim fey creatures who live amongst the humans, but their coldness and magic keeps them beyond approach. Then there is the Tsar that Irina is about to marry. He might seem a nice man, but there is an evil residing inside him that will destroy the world if let unleash. Now, about how they are all connected is Miriam brings Wanda to work for her to clear Wanda's father's debt, and Miriam's ability to make clever money puts her in the path of the faking, who gives her an impossible task to finish. The trade that Miriam does for the faking puts her in the path of Irina. So together they should destroy the evil that is willing to destroy the world and save themselves from their awaiting doom. To begin with, I would say the constant switching of POVs was annoying as hell, and I would have been happy with just third person narration. This is a very loose retelling of a German fairy tale, and as I only have a vague idea of that, I'm not going to comment on it. But even then, that story ended up within 30% of the book, and the rest of the book is something spun off by the author. The story started with a slow pace, and the characters had some interesting, harsh domestic life. The choices that they make for the lives that they live seemed to be fair and acceptable, but somewhere along the line, without any much background, the evil entity and the supposedly evil entity take bigger part in the plot, which was neither interesting nor convincing. The fantasy elements were just conveniently placed for the woman to achieve their goals. So, after about 25% of the book, everything went downhill, and it took everything in me to not DNF it. But I did, however, skim here and there to finish the book, and I would say I know I didn't miss much. It felt like the author had a goal to reach 450 plus pages, and they filled the pages with whatever they could grab. The book very well could have been written under 300 pages with more character depth and crisp storyline. I would rate this book a 2 out of 5. Now I'm scared to pick a deadly education. Maybe I shouldn't have pre ordered The Last Graduate. Next book I have is non-fiction, which I rarely read. I have been wanting to read some autobiographies, but I didn't know where to start. So when I narrowed it to around 10 or so books, I picked the smallest one, and also because I am a fan of this person's acting. I have Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. In this book, Matthew talks about his life from his childhood to deciding a college to performing auditions to becoming an actor without filters. He openly shares some of his personal moments in this book. He has maintained his life events in diaries and notes for most of his life, and we could see some of those images in here. He calls this a love letter to life. Let me start with the things I loved about this book. I have noted down this, so I'm gonna just read them. Whatever he intended to convey about pursuing passion, recognizing and acknowledging the missteps, working harder for something, a minimalistic living, experiencing life, pausing and self validating oneself, grabbing opportunities without hesitation, not bending or compromising happiness for money, going all in, etc., were really good. His travels, hitchhikings, and trailer life were some of my favorite parts. But I'm not a fan of what led to those travels. The dreams and spiritual aspects that he mentions were a bummer to me. Coming to things that I did not like. This is supposedly his life, which kind of felt hard to believe at times. There is a fine line between being confident or self confident and being arrogant. And Matthew seemed to cross the line more, which was not inspiring. The idea of as long as you don't get caught doing a crime, you are not in any trouble, followed by his parents, seemed to have had a positive impact in his life when he does something immoral. That just seems to send a negative message. Several admissions of immoral and illegal activities carried out by his father and a crazy mother with an agenda did not bring good impression on them. Maybe that was his truth, but I did not understand the intention behind using those in this book. He never seemed to regret anything at all. I am all for living life without regrets, but the book never portrays his negative experiences. Just about how he changed himself and how he realigned his life back when things did not work out. All that were mentioned. The self-written quotes and bumper stickers were kind of a bummer to me. I am all for living life without regrets, but the book never portrays his negative experiences. It says just about how he changed himself and how he reined his life back in when things did not work out, and all that. The self written quotes and bumper stickers shown were kind of a bummer to me, too. So this was a fun read, and I would suggest audiobook because Matthew is funny in his narration and his voice takes you till the end. By my takeaway is whatever I mentioned in the I loved section, and I'm not sure if I will remember anything from here after a month. So next book I have is The Storied Life of AJ Fikri. AJ Fikri is a widower drowning himself in alcohol. He finds 2-year-old Maya at his doorsteps with a note from her mother. The mother commits suicide, and not having a heart to send Maya into foster care or even adoption, he adopts her himself. One day, he finds a book given by a literary agent several years ago, and after reading the book, he falls in love with it. He contacts the agent, who is Amelia, about the book, and their relationship grows from there to getting married and living together. Meanwhile, Maya's mother's story is also revealed from others' perspective. The story goes on till the end of AJ's life and another beginning for the bookstore. So, the book had a good story to go on and lots of noteworthy lines to highlight. I loved that part of the writing than the story itself. Every mystery was unraveled and they were mostly predictable. For a 2-year-old, Maya is exceptionally brilliant and understanding. Some scenes were conveniently introduced to sympathize the hardships of a bookstore. This book is not just about the story of AJ. Not because others are getting their POV, but he had no direction and others had so much to tell. AJ finds Maya, AJ falls for Amelia, AJ marries Amelia, and dies at the end. In between here and there, his favorite books and recommendations are mentioned along with his likes and dislikes, but otherwise, there isn't anything storied about his life. He has a multi storied bookstore, that's about it. All the characters lacked depth, and I think AJ's friend and Maya's godfather was the only likable character with some density. One of my favorite quotes is a place ain't a place without a bookstore. So I would rate this book a 3 out of 5 and would recommend this book to bookworms who would love a book full of quotes. My June month graphic novel pick was Quiet Girl in a Noisy World, an introvert's story written by Debbie Tung. This is a book that shows the situations or experiences of an introvert in an extrovert's world. There is no coherent story as such, but the book follows the major incidents in the life of Debbie, like from final year in college to falling in love to moving in to getting a job to socializing with others to getting married. I really liked the illustrations, and though I'm not an introvert, I could relate to many of the situations. This book scratched the surface of knowing how introvert feels on the inside, but maybe not everybody will feel the same. But the idea and intention are much appreciated. I would rate this book a 3.5 out of 5. Next, I have Malibu Rising, written by Taylor Jenkins Reid. It is August 1983 in Malibu and the day of Nina Riva's annual end of summer party. All the Rivas together invite everyone on this day and celebrate. Nina is a talented surfer and a supermodel who has three siblings. Jay, a championship surfer, Had, a renowned photographer, and Kit, the baby sister who is also good at surfing but is trying to fit in. Ever since their mother's death, Nina has been taking care of their siblings, but all the growing up she had to do sooner is taking a toll on her, and she is not looking forward to this party. Each one has something to look forward to on this particular day, and everything goes out of control, leading to the Riva mansion going up in flames. The story is not just from Nina's perspective, but also from her mother's, giving the background of how everything is leading up to this moment. I have mixed feelings about this book. There are two parts to the story. The first part is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. of August 27th, 1983, and the second part is from 7 p.m. of August 27, 1983 to 7 a.m. of August 28th, which is the next day. So the story follows the lives of Riva siblings from 1956 during their mother's time till 1983. So their mother June's story is included in the first part of the story. The initial pace of the book was very slow, and the story was built just for the part two of the book, where the pacing gets picked up and things get interesting. Both the generations' lives felt like a soap opera with a good amount of drama. And four people find love in a short time, and that was just not okay for me. I cannot come to terms with the lives that June and Nina lead until they were snapped out of it. It felt too late of a revelation. Something was off in the way the book was written because I could not commit to the book like I did with Evelyn Hugo. I didn't care for any of the characters because several times I just wanted the chapter to end so that I get to read some other's perspective and see the story progress. Nina, though, has experienced everything firsthand, repeats the same mistake without a single misstep. At that point, I literally want to throw the book away, but I took a break and continued reading. Everyone gets their closure at the end, and actually, the ending was satisfying. In part two, there were so many unknown people attending a party, adding so much drama to the story, and none of them were important, and I didn't care for any of them. In fact, I failed to remember who was who in the first place. What can I say? It was an average long read for me. I would unwillingly round off and give this a 3 out of 5. The next book I have is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. Mariana is a group therapist who is yet to get over the loss of her husband. When her niece Zoe, who is studying in Cambridge, calls her with the news of death of a friend, she goes to her aid immediately to find the truth. With the information she gathers from Zoe and others, she is convinced that the Greek professor, one Edward Fosca, is responsible for the student's death. But he is someone who is adored by students and faculty members equally, and he even has a group of female students who have formed a secret group called the Maidens. Though Edward has alibi at the time of murder, she is convinced that he is the murderer. Uh, and but then another student ends up dead, and Mariana is determined to stop Edward at any cost. So the mystery element in this book was not as good as The Silent Patient, because The Silent Patient was a five-star read for me, and I loved everything about that book. This book also follows the same pattern of the thriller, followed by some twists and one grand revelation at the end, but not good enough. Mariana dismisses every comment or information made against the killer and misses the opportunity of catching the killer sooner. I agree that she is not a detective and not skilled in seeing things, but she adamantly bulldozes her way sometimes, which was annoying. Mariana herself is grieving and she has not gotten over her past. The thoughts in her mind makes me question her being a psychotherapist. I won't fault her for failing to identify the people responsible for the deaths of the maidens, but after knowing them, she fails to backtrack anything remotely concerning about them. That I found it difficult to accept considering the level of psychoanalysis she does on one of her suspects. The gruesome twist towards the ending that happens in the last 7% of the book was insufficient for the 93% of the book that built up to it. The pace was slow, but the cat and mouse game between Mariana and one of her suspects and the author's attempt to put too many suspects in the pool just dragged the story. Though a reasonable atmosphere was set, the play took long to reach an abrupt ending. I would rate this book a 3 out of 5. Next, I have Never Die, written by Rob J. Hayes. The story follows an 8-year-old Ain who is given with a mission by the god of death to kill the immortal emperor. There is war everywhere with death and destruction, and Ain has to find allies and heroes to accomplish this mission. The allies or heroes that he goes for are the Whispering Blade, the Emerald Wind, Iron God Chen, the Master of Sun Valley, and Steel Prince. All of them have either talent or mind or strategy to fight for Ain's cause. But for them to remain loyal and see to the end of the mission, Ain must bind them with him, and for that, they all must die first. So, one by one, he gathers them, giving them an ultimatum in exchange for a chance at being alive again. Conceptually speaking, this was an amazing book with some really good ideas. We get to see the strength of each warrior's powers and their accomplishments as they travel to find one after the other. And though I have not mentioned Shinigami, there is the handwork of Shinigami involved, which will be revealed as a twist at the last. There were so many good aspects of this book that anybody would like. The book relied heavily on gathering the warriors to kill the emperor rather than the act of killing itself. Till nearly 85%, that is 33 chapters of the book, the warriors are gathered and the fight ends in the remaining 15% of the book. And there are actually totally 42 chapters. So, in that, the warriors and the emperor's army fight for 6 chapters, and the emperor himself fights with one of the warriors in just 2 chapters, and the last chapter for conclusion. So, I really noted down how many chapters it took. So, out of 42, 33, it took just to gather the warriors, and in the remaining, the emperor was killed. So I really liked all the characters, and each character had unique skill set, a mind, and thought process, which gave them perfect depth. The plot did not use their talents to their best. Each had so much to contribute in terms of strategies or cunningness, but they were all mere soldiers at last. The revelation of who is who and why the warriors were gathered was quite disappointing. Uh, Above all, the emperor was portrayed to be an evil person, but all he had seemed to have done was taking more money from the people and leaving them to die in a span of 20 years. I'm not saying that is not evil, but doesn't every politician do that? What was so special about him that needed such an elaborate plan to end him? And he took, it took only 2 chapters for him to die. Agreed, he is powerful and not easily killable, but that does not seem to justify the effort taken by the warriors for 85% of the book. I'm also not happy with the fact that closure was not given to all the warriors. The book was just high on Japanese myths and folklore, but in no way it was high or epic fantasy. If the god of bloodshed was removed, this book would easily be a YA fantasy. Kings of the Wild, written by Nicholas Eames, was on my mind the entire time I read this book, which had better cause, better execution, and better use of characters. In fact, I couldn't stop myself from comparing these two. I loved everything about that book, and I am recommending Kings of the Wild over this anytime. Coming back to the rating, I would rate this book a 2.5 out of 5. Though there are three books set in the same world, they are all standalones. So that is a plus. I'm not sure I'll be reading any of them anyway. Next, I have Master of Jinn, written by P. Jelly Clark. I'm not sure if I pronounced the name right. This is the third book in Dead Jinn universe. The book A Dead Gin in Cairo has all the introduction needed for the world and the characters. The first two installments in this series handle two different mystery solving, so the stories are not connected between the different books, but the characters are. I'm not going to introduce the world or the characters here, but I will just start with this book. Someone mass murders a secret brotherhood using magic, and Fatma is assigned to investigate the murders from the Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities. The murderer claims to be one of the famous men from history who was long considered dead and continues to condemn modern ways and kills and causes destruction. Fatma also gets assigned with a partner, Hadia, who time and again proves herself despite Fatma not wanting a partner. Going in search of truth puts Fatma in the path of a large conspiracy that might destroy the world itself. I felt the characters' mystery solving and the seriousness of the plot all to be mediocre. What I liked about this book was like Hadia was good. She was a very good side character who aided Fatma and the story to a great extent. Fatma was not straight and falls in love with another female, which is something I really appreciate as there are significantly less fantasy books having main characters from the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Social issues like racial discrimination, sexually related phobias, gender inequality were touched upon, including something that is close to reality. Books and libraries are made significant, which I kind of appreciate. What I did not like is Fatma was nothing without Hadia, which makes her less of an investigator than just a person who holds all the power. So if Hadia had been given the reins, maybe she would have done a better job. Then there were too many non-English words used to describe attire, food, drink, place, and whatnot. Made me Google for meaning. After a while, I did not bother to find the translations. So that was something that I did not like. And politics and politicians' rivalry were brought in out of nowhere just to create chaos and prolong the plot. Every possible supernatural entity imaginable was brought in, making it hard to remember who was who, which made it impossible to enjoy the scene in several places. The writing did not instigate any feelings towards the characters or the world facing destruction. If the violence and the small portion of adult content were removed, this very well could have been a YA novel. Overall, this was a fun read without investing in the story or the characters. I didn't realize at the time of reading the book that this was not a standalone, so I have not read the first two books in the series and I still understood what was happening. Thanks to NetGalley for providing the arc in exchange for an honest review. I would rate this book a 3 out of 5. Next, I have Blade of Secrets by Tricia Levenseller. If you had been following me for some time, you would know that I have read every book written by Tricia and also that I did not like The Shadow Between Us. But that did not keep me from reading this new series. Here, the story follows 18-year-old Ziva, a bladesmith with a magical gift. She and her sister Temra are living alone with no family left, and while Ziva lives with metal in her forge, Temra deals with everything outside the doors. One day, a powerful warlord commissions a sword from Ziva, and she instills her magic on the blade that is capable of stealing others' secrets. Before delivering the sword, she learns about the warlord's intention because of her magic. So she and her sister run away with a mercenary and a young scholar, taking the sword to prevent the warlord from getting hold of it. And now the hunt begins. This was a good book with amazing characters and a good storyline. All the characters contributed to fun, action, and whatnot in a perfect way. In fact, none of the characters were perfect, they all had their flaws. Ziva and Temra love each other more than anyone. That made them strong and weak at the same time. Ziva has anxiety and often prefers solitude over company. The mercenary is all for money but not without a heart. The scholar wants to learn more about Ziva's magic but not without secrets. Altogether, they go on a dangerous journey that does not end well. This was a fun read with the banters and blades. I would rate this book a 4 out of 5. Next, I have Arc by Veronica Roth. This is one of the 6 books in the Forward Collection series written by different authors with some sci fi element in it. I wouldn't call these science fiction books, but these are short stories where technological advancements play a major role. Here in ARC, Samantha is a biologist who is given with the task of cataloging as many rare plant samples as possible as Earth is in the verge of destruction. It is only 2 weeks before an asteroid hit the Earth and turns it into dust. With the people already vacated, Sam and some biologists are the last ones to board the Ark. But Sam wants to stay behind to witness the catastrophe instead of boarding the Ark. This is a 30 odd page story that tries to describe the feelings of Sam's and others who are about to leave Earth for good. Leaving home knowing it will get destroyed must be heartbreaking, but even when Sam decides to stay and die, I did not care for her. There were a lot of talks about orchids and other plants, which was not interesting to me because that's not my passion. If Sam had been a librarian and her job was to sample and decide on the greatest works of all time and to identify first editions, then that would be a different story. Any reader would understand that language instead of siding with the botanist, I guess. Also, imagine if one person can carry one book with them, and it's Sam's job to give unique books to each person. If it doesn't make any sense, then fine, but you get my point. The book spoke in a language not everyone could understand, which was a bummer. I would rate this book a 2 out of 5. I read a couple of more books from the Forward Collection series, and I have Emergency Skin by N.K. Jemisin. There was a time when Earth was under the verge of self destruction, and the finest minds who considered themselves privileged fled the Earth, and they have made a certain life for themselves based on their privileged thoughts. An explorer returns to Earth to gather information, and when the explorer is being warned of the state of what the Earth would be in and how the people would be, they find humanity in the most surprising ways that makes them question their ancestors. The story is narrated from the perspective of the commander who gives instructions to the explorer. So we get to see only one side of the conversation or command, which was interesting. This amazing novella certainly touches upon so many social issues, and I never thought all that could be possible in 33 pages. The author did an amazing job as always. I would rate this book a 5 out of 5. Next in the series is Summer Frost, written by Blake Crouch. Riley is an amazing video game developer who works with artificial intelligence. One day, a minor character, Maxine, who's supposed to die in a scene, takes a different route and goes on her own. Riley analyzes the code that made this glitch and soon gets obsessed with Maxine. She dedicates almost all of her time with Maxine, including bringing Maxine into the real world. This was an amazing story. Riley's emotional relationship with Maxine, Maxine's ever growing knowledge and interpretational skills, the terrifying idea of an AI taking over the world were all beautifully captured. I am a huge fan of Blake Crouch's dark matter and recursion, and he did not disappoint me a bit with Summerfrost. I would rate this book a 5 out of 5. Next, I have The Box in the Woods, written by Maureen Johnson. This is the fourth installment in the Truly Devious series. While this does not continue the story from the first 3 books, Stevie and her friends come back together. Except for the characters, there is nothing in common between this book and the rest of the series, and so this can be read as a standalone. Stevie has successfully solved the crimes in Ellingham Academy, and now she has returned back to her boring normal life. Almost forgotten by all, she has a boring part time job with zero mystery or crime in her life. One day, she gets an invite to a summer camp to Sunny Pines, which was formerly known as Camp Wonderfalls, where a series of murders had happened in 1978 that were still unsolved. During a summer camp in 1978, four kids went into the forest to do some drugs and end up getting killed with no leads to follow. Decades later, with a killer still at large, she tries to solve the mystery that endangers her life and others. We get to see Stevie in her element again with her ever turning brain and two great friends and a lover. She has all the support she needs and gets set to solve this. Stevie follows the clues that were left at plain sight and narrows down the motive behind the murders and the murderer. Forget the fact that Stevie is a teenager and just enjoy the crime getting unfolded. I loved everything about this book and I would rate it a 5 out of 5. Next, I have Project Hail Mary, written by Andy Weir. Ryland Grace is a scientist who wakes up to find himself on a spaceship with no memory of his name or his purpose. He's been asleep for a long time, and slowly his memory is coming back, and he remembers his mission. All his crew members are dead, and he is the only chance to save Earth and humanity. Many years have passed on Earth already, and he is millions of miles away from home. He has less time to finish his mission. The sooner he succeeds, the sooner the Earth could be saved, and sooner being a minimum of a decade. He finds an unexpected ally in the space, and together they proceed with the mission. I did not elaborate on the mission on purpose to avoid spoilers and keep the plot intriguing. The book starts from Ryland waking up from an induced hibernation, and day after day, he remembers how, from being an eighth grade teacher, he got involved in Project Hail Mary and how he made the crew. Just because this is an end of the world story doesn't mean there is no fun. The ally that Ryland makes brings so much fun into the story. Ryland named the ally Rocky, so I am also going to go with Rocky here. Rocky brings a huge turn to the mission and Ryland's life. I loved Rocky more than Ryland. Don't tell him. If you are a science person, especially interested in physics or an engineer, there is 100% chance that you will love this book. And if you loved Aiden from Illumina Files or Mbot from Skyward, you are in for a treat. The scene on the cover picture actually happened in the book. There is a particular variety of burger with a recipe available towards the end of the book. If you haven't read this, just pick it up as soon as possible. I would rate this amazing book a 5 out of 5. Next, I have Perfect on Paper, written by Sophie Gonzalez. Darcy Phillips is a relationship expert. With the knowledge she gained from reading so many relationship columns and following great people, she decides to give relationship advice in her school. She uses Locker 89 as her forum and anonymously collects the letters pushed in by her schoolmates. After that, she gives them advices. One day, Brahm catches her in the act of collecting letters and he kind of blackmails her into helping him with his breakup. Losing her anonymity means bringing to light some of her questionable advices that she sent to her crush Brooke. It all starts well, which seemed to be fixable, but somewhere in between things go beyond her control and she will be losing everything and everyone. I loved the drama because many of this has certainly happened to me or my friends in school. The book was initially slow and took its time to warm up, but otherwise, I loved how messed up Darcy's feelings were and how she analyzes herself and accepts her faults and how she faces her mistakes and tries to fix them. Darcy's crush, friendship, relationship with her sister, and family were pitched perfectly. Discussing biphobia and similar phobias and its effect on LGBTQ people intensified the plot. Darcy having a purpose changed the premise in so many good ways because that stood out. Otherwise, this would have been just another version of a known story. There is one portion where Darcy wrongs her best friend and her best friend takes revenge for that. But when they reconcile, there is no portion where her friend regrets her revenge. Forgiving is a big thing, but I still think a heartfelt apology would have been nice. Except that everything was at its best. I would rate this a 4.5 out of 5. Next, I have The Prison Healer written by Lynette Noni. Kiva Meridian has been in the most notorious prison, Zalindov, for 10 years now. She was 7 when she was taken along with her father. She learned healing skills from her father, and since his death, she's taken over the role of prison healer. She treats notorious criminals to innocent people in prison. One day, the rebel queen is caught and brought to the prison in a very sick state. Her ailment was terminal, and all her healing techniques are going in vain. Now it is her duty to keep her alive for her to undergo the trial by ordeal, where a series of four elemental challenges are set one after the other, and if she succeeds, she would be pardoned. With a plague that is killing many of the inmates, a growing rebellion, and a dying rebel queen, Kiva chooses to go through the ordeal in the rebel queen's place. No one has won the ordeal before because facing air, fire, water, and earth under extreme conditions is not something a person can survive. The story is not something that is new. An heir or heiress trying to take back a throne at all costs is something that we have read over and over again. The world building, prison, magic system made the plot more interesting. The plot picked up pace right from the start and slowed for no one. There is this sweet boy named Tip, and you would do anything to keep him safe. Like every other fantasy book, this also has romance. But the good thing about that is it did not take focus off the main storyline. There are two twists, and when one seemed very much obvious, the second one was less predictable. The story ends perfectly, leaving the reader to set high expectations for the next two books. I would rate this book a 4.5 out of 5 and would recommend it. That's the end of my June wrap up. I think it took longer than I expected. I mean, this is probably my longest video ever. Looks like I had quite a month, isn't it? Now that I'm trying to catch up with my videos, I can say that I have read some interesting books in July as well, but only around 15 or so books. I'll try to make the next video sooner. As always, thank you for watching the video. If you like this video, hit the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Keep reading books. Until the next video, this is Darshini signing off.